Was saying, there is no better way in my mind to come together for a new year than to come together, do communion together, receive communion together, to pray over one another together, to remember that this is not something that, this life in general, but especially this walk of faith is not something that we do alone. This is something that was intended to be done in community with one another. But I have some real encouraging news to start the new year off for you, and that is that all of us are running out of time. Every last one of us. We're all running out of time. Now, I actually do not know who gave me this hourglass. This showed up in an Amazon package about, I don't know, maybe a month or so ago now. And I've asked family members, hey, did you send me an hourglass? I've asked some people that I thought might have sent it, and everyone's like, no, we didn't send it. So I'm bringing this out for a couple reasons this morning. One, if you sent it to me, I'd love to know that you sent it to me because I'd love to know why. I'm honestly sitting here going, either somebody's telling me, Justin, your time is almost up, or they're telling me, hey, you need to start timing your messages. And the good news is this thing's an hour, so let's begin. Let's do this. But really, I have recently set it on a shelf in my office that is actually right next to a skull, not a real skull, but a human skull, a replica, that sits on a shelf in my office that has been there for a long time to remind me that someday this life will end. This physical life on this earth will end. And that's not a scary thing. That's not I look at that going, oh my goodness, like I've got all these things that I need to get done. But it's to remind me that there are important things, there are priorities, there are the big things in life to put my focus on and not get so caught up in the mundane and the unimportant things. And so I have it there as a reminder that someday this will end. And now I get to put an hourglass next to it. That reminds me that I am getting closer and closer to my skull being all that's left of me physically. I know, it might sound a little bit morbid, but hey, I was a youth pastor for 12 years, and so that kind of stuff is normal for me. This morning, though, I hope that it serves as a reminder for us of that too, that someday this will end. And last week, I asked you a question, or I invited you to consider a question that if you knew that December 31st, 2026 was going to be the day that happened, like you knew right now on January 4th that on December 31st, 2026, none of us are guaranteed a day or an hour or anything, but you knew that would be it, what would you want to hear on December 31st, 2026 before you took your last breath? As people looked at you and they said, this is your legacy that you are going to leave, what would you want that to be? You know, would it be, I want my legacy to be that I scored more points than anybody else in all of history in whatever sport it is that I play, or I logged more minutes watching Stranger Things than anybody else that I have ever come across. And I only think Stranger Things because I feel like every young person I talk to right now is working their way through Stranger Things for the first or 15th time. And so do I want to be the one who knows it front and back better than anybody else? Do I want on December 31st to be told that, guess what, out of everybody in the world, you posted more on social media and you had more likes and more views than anybody else, and people know more about your life from a distance than anybody else out there? Or I was the first one into work and the last one out every single day. Do you want at the end of it to be like, hey, congratulations, you lost the most percentage of body fat of anybody else in the entire world? What do you want your legacy to be if December 31st, 2026 was going to be your last day and it was going to be the last thing you would hear about what it is that you accomplished? Now, none of those are necessarily on the surface bad things. But what happens when those things become the big thing? Are they really the things that we want to hear when that day comes? I'm going to invite you to turn to Matthew chapter 16. And we're going to read some words of Jesus. And no, they're not going to be up on the screen. You're actually probably going to find over the course of the next year that you're going to see fewer and fewer scriptures up on the screen because I want to, and I know, I should have actually put on there Matthew chapter 16 so that you could remember what it is I invited you to turn to, which would be Matthew chapter 16. And if you want to, you can actually put your finger in Luke chapter 14 for later. So Matthew 16, Luke chapter 14, that part I can put up there for you. But the reason for it is if we're going to proclaim this to be the Word of God, and we're going to proclaim this to be truth, then church, we've got to develop a habit of being in it and opening it up. And so I'm inviting us all to come along on that journey. And I would invite you, I'm going to put this invitation out at the end also, I would invite you to bring your Bible with you. We have them in the pews, and I know we've got them on phones, but I've shared that stat with you about how many notifications we get on average during the day. And our human brains, when we see that notification come in, research would show we can't ignore it. No matter what it is we're reading, something clicks inside of us even for a second. So I would invite you, bring your paper Bible along. But for this morning, Matthew chapter 16, verse 21, Jesus is beginning to talk about, because he did know when his last day on this earth and his physical body was coming, he begins to talk about that moment coming. And in verse 21 of Matthew 16, he said, or it reads, "From then on, Jesus began to tell his disciples plainly that it was necessary for him to go to Jerusalem and that he would suffer many terrible things at the hands of the elders, the leading priests, and the teachers of religious law. He would be killed, but on the third day he would be raised from the dead." But Peter took him aside and began to reprimand him for saying such things. "Heaven forbid, Lord," he said, "this will never happen to you." And this, one of the biggest slaps in the face that you see in all of Scripture. Jesus turned, not that he literally slapped him in the face, turned to Peter and said, "Get away from me, Satan. You are a dangerous trap to me. You are seeing things merely from a human point of view, not from God's." I'm going to take just a quick detour here and understand, we talked about this last year. Satan is at work all the time, and Jesus saw right through who was actually speaking in that moment. And he understood this is not Peter. This is Satan speaking through Peter's voice at this moment. And he reprimands Satan, not Peter at that moment. Then Jesus, verse 24, said to his disciples, "If any of you wants to be my follower, you must give up your own way, take up your cross, and follow me. If you try to hang on to your life, you will lose it. But if you give up your life for my sake, you will save it. And what do you benefit if you gain the whole world, but you lose your own soul? Is anything worth more than your soul? For the Son of Man will come with his angels in the glory of his Father and will judge all people according to their deeds. And I tell you the truth, some standing here right now will not die before they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom." What good is it to you if you gain the whole world over the course of 2026, but you lose your very soul? Now, I realize this is the time of year where people set a lot of goals. I think I've already had 3 different conversations with 3 different guys about my age, and we're all sitting there saying the same thing, we've got to get our physical health back in check in 2026. We've crossed that 40-year-old threshold and just given into the idea of it doesn't matter anymore. It's all downhill from here. And like you said, 3 different conversations, and I'm right there with them saying, yeah, we got to get this back in check. But what if we gained all of that, but in the process, our whole life became about that, and we lost our soul to that? How do we know where our soul lies? How do we know who has possession of it? Who is leading it? Who owns our soul? How do we know who we've lost it to or what we've lost it to? I believe through reading the Word and just through living life that our words and our actions reveal our priorities. Would you agree? You can give me a head nod. You can give me a no. It's okay. Our words and our actions, they reveal the priorities that are inside of us, and our priorities reveal who or what possesses our soul. And we say, but it's about the thoughts, and it's God, Jesus himself tells us that he sees the heart and he sees what's in the mind. And that's absolutely true, but you know how it's revealed? What's in our hearts and what's in our mind is what we say and what we do. What we talk about and the actions that we have, those are what are showing this is what has possession of my soul. Let me give you some examples of what I mean by that. what we talk about the most, those are the things that excite us. I mean, you can disagree with me. You can give me a, no, I don't think that's right. And hey, I'm cool with that. I'm not going to sit here and be like, hey, I saw that head nod. That was a no. Let me tell you, I'm the pastor. I'm right. Just get over it. But I believe it to be true that what we talk about the most is what excites us the most. I had so many, actually, do we have anybody here, I'm pretty sure we have some, I know we have some, that are Kentucky natives, like grew up or lived in Kentucky. Now, I'm not about to bash the Wildcats. The Jayhawks lost yesterday too, so I've got nothing negative to say. Any Kentucky people that are willing to admit, like I've got Kentucky roots? Okay, we got one. I get it. Most people don't want to admit they're from Kentucky. Sorry, I wasn't going to do that. No. Okay, I had a bunch of roommates, or not roommates, I had a bunch of classmates in college that were from Kentucky. Now I live close to Kentucky, so I understand it even more. But they would rant and rave about the best drink that has ever been given to mankind by God. Anybody know what it is? Can you guess what it is that I'd be talking about? I heard it over here. Ale 8. We were at a Christian college, so bourbon wasn't a big thing. I don't mean that to sound like Christians can't drink. That's not what I meant there, but we couldn't admit it there if we were. Ale 8. I personally think it tastes disgusting. But every Kentucky person that I talked to, they would go back to Kentucky over break and bring back a trunk load of Ale 8 that they would then sell to the suckers in school who thought that the Kentucky people knew what they were talking about. Now, Judah recently had his first Ale 8, and he thought it was absolutely amazing. But to be fair, if it has the ingredient of sugar, Judah thinks it's amazing, and that's all it takes. But seriously, everywhere you went, we would sit down at a restaurant, and they'd be like, nah, this Dr. Pepper's no Ale 8. Or we'd go out and, I bring up Dr. Pepper because it was the main drink. Mountain Dew, iced tea, sweet tea, didn't matter what it was. Well, it's no Ale 8. Ale 8's like the best drink ever. And they would go on and on and on, and it excited them so much. They didn't care if we agreed with them. They still told us all about it. What we talk about is what excites us. In Luke chapter 19, Jesus' followers are walking along behind him, and they're yelling out, "Blessings on the King who comes in the name of the Lord, peace in heaven and glory in the highest heaven." But some Pharisees, some of those religious leaders, come along, and they say, "Teacher, rebuke your followers for saying things like that." And Jesus' response to them is, if they keep quiet, the stones along the road would burst into cheers. They cannot keep it in. When we are excited about him, when his followers are excited about him, they cannot keep it in. It doesn't matter who's around. It doesn't matter who it might offend to hear his name. They can't help but talk about him. The thing is, I got sick of hearing about Ale 8. I still can't stand to hear people talk about Ale 8. But they didn't care. And they weren't offending me by talking about it. It was just, I could tell this is something that they love. And they want to share it with the world. Paul said it this way. He said, "For I am not ashamed of this good news about Christ. It is the power of God at work, saving everyone who believes, the Jew first and also the Gentile." He had this good news that he couldn't hold in. It didn't matter who was around him. It didn't matter for those Kentucky people if they were just talking to Kentucky people. They could be talking to the Texas people who are all about Dr. Pepper with the real sugar and all this stuff. And they would just go on and on and on because they could not keep it in. They weren't ashamed of how they felt about it. What excited them is what they talked about, and it showed just a little bit of where their soul was. Now, I don't think they'd actually given their soul to Ale 8, but it was an awesome example of how our words begin to show what's inside of us. But as we consider who has our soul, I believe that we can also look at what do we want to learn about. Because we learn about the things that we're passionate about. We might have some surface knowledge about things that we don't care about, but we truly learn about the things that we're passionate about. Even young people, as you're in school and you're sitting there, there's some classes that you love those classes. Well, for some of you, it's like, no, there aren't any of those classes. But for those of you who have a class that you love, it's usually because you're passionate about the topic of that class and you want to learn everything that there is to know about it. As we grow older, if we're passionate about politics, man, we are pulling up Fox News or CNN every chance we get. We're standing around here on a Sunday morning talking about the most recent political thing that happened in our world. We're learning about it so that we can discuss it, so that we know more about it. We learn about the things that we are passionate about, not out of guilt. Like, I don't go because somebody told me that if I don't, I'll be a failure. I don't learn about this because someone told me I had to. I learn about it because I want to learn about it. In Psalm 119, verse 15, the psalmist writes, I will study your commandments and I will reflect on your ways. See, I can study something and never learn it. Trust me, I've done it many times. I've taken a lot of tests that the next day, I couldn't have told you a thing about what that test was about. I couldn't have given you a single answer. I got a CDL 20 years ago. When I moved here and had to retake my CDL test, I flunked it the first time because I didn't know those answers anymore. I learned them for the test, but when we're passionate about it, we reflect on it. When we're passionate about it, we learn about it. And we hide it deep within us. We know about it. And the things that possess our soul, the ones that possess our soul, we enforce those things because we enforce things that are important. Think about this for a second. Getting close to bedtime. This could be if you have kids and you're thinking about with your kids or just for yourself. It's getting close to bedtime. Outside of the things that our body just physically has to do, meaning go to the bathroom, or other things like that. What's something that almost everybody does before bed, even though it's not absolutely crucial to life? Brush your teeth. Man, you guys got that quick. We brush our teeth. Why? Because it's important to us to have our teeth not rot and decay so that we don't have to go visit Aaron more often than we want to. For those of you who don't know, Aaron is a dentist. That makes more sense if you know who he is. But we teach our kids to brush their teeth because it's important for us for them not to get a bunch of cavities. We enforce it even when they sit there and they go, I don't want to brush my teeth. Brushing my teeth is miserable. I'll be honest with you. Some people talk to me about how good it feels to brush your teeth. I'm like, this is a chore. I hate brushing my teeth. I've admitted to you that I don't like to floss. Brushing my teeth is something I do because it's important, not because I enjoy it. And I enforce it with my kids because it's important. And you know, here's the other thing about it. I'm not worried about my kids someday going, you made me brush my teeth when I was young, and now I'm going to push back and not brush my teeth. We enforce what's important. We follow through because it's important, and we don't worry about what they might push back with or what others might say about it because it's just that important. Doing your homework, kids. I know it's so easy to be like, I don't want to do this, and the parents come along and say, you got to do it anyway. Going to practice. It's important. I don't want to go to practice. Too bad. If you want to play in the game, you got to go to practice. We enforce the things that are important to us. In Proverbs 22, we're instructed, direct your children onto the right path, and when they are older, they will not leave it. That right path being the things that are important, not the just side things, not the, well, this would be good, but it's not really that big of a deal. No, the things that are truly important, we enforce it, and we push people down that path. Not worrying about whether or not they're going to get upset at us, not worrying about whether or not we enjoy doing it, but because it's important to do. And as we look at those things, what energizes us, as we look at what we're passionate about, as we look at what's important to us, we begin to see revealed where our soul lies, who or what possesses our soul. In Luke chapter 14, Jesus says again to his followers, we're going to start in verse 26, if you want to turn there. In Luke chapter 14, starting in verse 26, he says, "If you want to be my disciple, you must, by comparison, hate everyone else. Your father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters, yes, even your own life. Otherwise, you cannot be my disciple." And I'm going to take another little detour here because I think it's really important for us to understand that Jesus did not just tell us that it is okay to hate our parents or to hate our siblings or to hate the people that we come into contact with. There are those who have read it and only stay at that surface level and say, see, this is why it's okay for me not to like the people in my life. No, we miss those words where he says, by comparison, you must hate your father and mother. Meaning, your love for me is so high that your love for others pales in comparison. You still love others, but your love for me is so high. And if you do not carry your own cross, verse 27, and follow me, you cannot be my disciple. But don't begin until you count the cost. For who would begin construction of a building without first calculating the cost to see if there is enough money to finish it? Otherwise, you might complete only the foundation before running out of money, and then everyone would laugh at you. They would say, "There's the person who started that building and couldn't afford to finish it." Or what king would go to war against another king without first sitting down with his counselors to discuss whether his army of 10,000 could defeat the 20,000 soldiers marching against him? And if he can't, he will send a delegation to discuss terms of peace while the enemy is still far away. So you cannot become my disciple without giving up everything that you own. This is January 4th. This is the beginning of a year, and the beginning of a year is the time when we so often, are heading up to it, we sit down and we say, these are the things that I want to accomplish this year. And so often by January 31st, I could read you the stat about New Year's resolutions. I don't remember what it is off the top of my head, but the majority of people have already given up on their New Year's resolution. And the reason for that is that the majority of people don't truly stop and consider the cost of what it's going to take in order to complete that New Year's resolution. The majority of people who set out on a fitness goal for the next year don't stop and consider that this means that I'm going to have to eat differently. I might have to drink more of that boring stuff called water, and I'm probably going to have to move my body more than I did the previous year, which might mean that I have to get up a little earlier, or it might mean that I have to watch a little bit less of my screen, whichever screen we choose. It could mean all sorts of different things, because the cost of getting into shape, the cost of working on our fitness, means we're going to have to give something up. Something in our life is going to have to change. Otherwise, we're just going to keep getting the same results that we got the previous year. And January 31st or before that comes along, and we've already given up because the cost was just simply too high. There's a reason that I didn't spend last week talking to us about, hey, what is your New Year's resolution? And that's because I want us to get a little bit past the year and to then stop and consider, what does my relationship look like with this one that if I'm coming here on a Sunday morning, there's a decent chance, I realize it's not 100% across the board, but what does my relationship with this one that I call my Savior really look like? Where is he really on my priority list in my life? When I wake up in the morning and I think about the things that I have to do that day or the things that I'm excited about for that day, how far down the list do I get before his name comes into my head? Or as I'm thinking about those things that I'm going to enforce with my children or enforce in my life, those things that I consider to be truly important, how far down the list do I have to get before I see something that he's truly involved in? Not that I'm making that excuse of, everything is spiritual, so he's involved in that, but that thing that is truly because of my relationship with him. How far down the list do I have to go? As I'm thinking about the things that I want to learn about day in and day out, How far do I have to go before the book or the podcast or the music or whatever it is points back to him? How many other things are on my list first before it comes to his word? Before it comes to spending time in conversation with him? How many other things are on my list before I consider gathering together with the body, with the family of his believers? How many other things are the priority for my children before I enforce that this is important and the time with him is important? Where is he at? This is a great time. A new year is a great beginning to really start evaluating honestly where he's at on my list of priorities. If you truly want to follow him, if you truly want to be his follower, because he tells us what it takes. And he tells us to count the cost of what it's going to take to follow him. This isn't one of those guilt relationships, though. And that is the beauty of the gospel. That is the beauty of the good news, is that we can look at it and be like, truthfully, like he's priority number 10. And he doesn't sit there and say, he doesn't sit there and just heap the guilt upon us and tell us what a terrible person we are. He invites us to put him back at number 1. And to show us how much we matter to him and how much that relationship matters to him, he gave his life. He didn't hold anything back. But he's not the passive-aggressive friend that's posting something on Facebook about something that you did or sending you the text that you're trying to sit there and interpret, figuring out what in the world it means. No, he's just telling you, hey, I want to be your number 1. And if you're going to be my follower, I have to be your number 1. I believe through my own life experience, and I believe through the experiences that I've seen of others, that he can be down on that list and be put back at the top. Because I believe that the excitement about things in our lives can be developed. That we might sit there and go, yeah, but being with him, it's not, reading scripture, this isn't exciting. It's really confusing and it's really boring. I believe that we can go into it with that mindset, and you know what it's going to be? It's going to be boring and it's going to be confusing. Or we can go into it with a mindset of, I know that people find excitement out of this, and I really want to see what that excitement is. And we can invite him to show us what is so exciting about his word. We can invite him to show us why it's so important for us to learn about it and to enforce what's in it. And it can grow within us. I've seen it happen. I've experienced it happening. I've still got half my time left, people. And I believe it can be done by goals that we set. I truly do. By habits that we can develop. Habits that grow upon habits that grow upon habits. That in the beginning, they might be a little bit of work, but over time, they become something so much bigger. They become something that we're passionate about following through with. You see that I wrote wildly important goals up there, and I'm just going to real quickly. There's a book written in 2012 called The 4 Disciplines of Execution, or nicknamed 4DX. And in 4DX, they talk about developing what they call wildly important goals, or WIGs. And what they do when they walk through that is they establish that there are some great goals that we can have. Losing weight, if you need to lose weight, it's a great goal. Being more into fitness and drinking more water, that's great. If you need to, work on your heart or your any of your cardiovascular or your respiratory stuff, those are great goals. Reading more over the course of the year, it's a great goal. There's nothing wrong with those goals. But what are the wildly important must-have goals? What are the relationships that are above any other relationship that we want to invest in? Because there's a lot of them that are great relationships, but there are some that are even more important than others. And how do we invest in those? And so without spending a bunch of time on it like I'd planned on, which I have, but I'm not going to do, What are your wigs for 2026? If December 31st, 2026, you knew was going to be your last breath, what would you want someone to come up to you and say, hey, I can tell that this person or this thing had possession of your soul over the course of 2026? Because the choice is up to us. He invites us to take up our cross daily and to follow him. He invites us into relationship with him every single day. And if we really evaluate, there would have to be those times where we go, I'm not as invested as he is. But we can be. God, we thank you for giving of your life for us. We thank you for inviting us into relationship with you. There is nothing that we have done to deserve this. There's nothing that we can do to deserve it. To have the creator of the world give his life for us and then invite us to be in a relationship with him, and it's outstanding. And truthfully, God, it's something that I don't want to stop talking about. We've got so many songs that sing about shouting it from the mountaintops or telling it on a mountain or being a city on a hill, all these different analogies that we have, but God, they all come down to I don't want to stop talking about it. And God, I want what you want, which is, I believe, is for Monroe City Church of God to be a people, not a place, but to be a people who won't stop talking about you. Who aren't afraid if people roll their eyes a little bit. Who aren't afraid if they're in a situation where other people don't necessarily share that same excitement. But we just can't hold it in. God, help us develop that excitement and that passion, that importance in our lives to be those people. Amen. Hey, just real quick, and you won't see me up here again this morning. As we get ready to go into 2026, we're not interested in just telling you, hey, this is really important, go figure it out. But we're interested in walking along beside you as we all figure it out. Because your pastors don't have this all figured out. I don't have it all figured out. Nobody in this room has it all figured out, but we can figure it out together. And so you're going to hear of a lot of opportunities that we're going to provide throughout the course of the year to figure out what this means, to pick up our cross daily and to walk with him. We're going to start our Wednesday nights back up this Wednesday for MC Kids, MC Students, and for our adults. And that's a great opportunity to come together. We're going to spend some time over the course of this year on whether it be a quick weekend thing or whether it be a multi-week thing of coming together and doing some studies on habits that we can put into our lives that will draw us and our families closer to him. We're going to have one-off events. We're going to have ongoing things. We've got community groups that go on every single week that you can be a part of. But we also have everybody in this room that we can be in a relationship with. I realize some it's going to take more work than others, but every single person in here is a possible relationship that can draw you closer to God and that you can help draw closer to God as well. It's going to mean making some commitments like I'm going to actually seek to understand what this word is all about. Or in your personal life when you wake up, figuring out ways to say, how can I start my day with him instead of eventually remembering him? Some of the things you're going to have to do in your own habits, but we want desperately to walk along beside you this year as you develop those habits and as we grow closer to him together. So I'm excited about some of the things that are going to go on as a family, and I'm excited to hear how God's going to work in personal lives over the course of this year. And I hope that we'll be so excited that we can't help but share those stories with everybody around us. Would you stand?